Hi, welcome to Coffee and Colossians on Thursday. Today, coming to you from Edinburgh, actually from my daughter's house in Edinburgh, beautiful Edinburgh. Now, I was going to film this up at the castle, but it's a wee bit dreek, it's a wee bit wet, and so I'm indoors. Seems to be drying up just now, sun's coming out, but just thought we'd do it from here anyway. And we are at Colossians chapter 3, and a kind of change in tone. So, this is what the Christian life is like. It's what it's supposed to be. You're raised with Christ. You set your mind on Christ and on things above. Your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ appears, you will appear with him in glory. And I guess all of us love that. And then you just go straight to, put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you. Sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Put to death. I like reading Thomas Manton, and right now I'm reading a series of sermons here on Romans 6, which are absolutely brilliant. John Owen did a similar thing with a whole book on what's called mortification. And that's the word I want to use. I think it's a word we need to reclaim. Mortification means to put to death. Now, what would a Christian put to death? Well, he's been talking about death and life. And he's saying, you need to put to death whatever is contrary to Christ. Whatever within you is contrary to Christ. And I've been reading Dick Lucas on Colossians as well, and I found him to be incredibly helpful. So we have to think about how this actually works out. So let me suggest something of what Lucas summarizes in terms of this. He's saying, first of all, the apostolic teaching is always explicit and unambiguous about the extent of evil in the human heart. These sins of verse 5 are the sins of what paganism had and which Judaism condemned. And Paul says, if you know that you're in Christ, you will see within yourself the seeds of all this. Now, I know that. I know that for myself, the seeds of all these sins are there. Maybe some stronger than others. But who hasn't wrestled with sexual immorality or passion, evil desire, greed? Who hasn't wrestled with these things? So the first step is to recognize that we have that. The second step is to kill it. Now, this has nothing to do with, or very little to do with the flesh or with the body. We are to deal ruthlessly with these things. And Lucas points out the incentive here is not, oh dear, I'm going to go to hell, but the incentive here is this goes against Christ. This really upsets Christ. Devotion to Christ causes us to change the way that we live. And then another thing that Lucas points out is simply this, that this ethical teaching of the apostles is never out of date. We actually need to hear this. Christians need to hear this. We too often indulge sexual immorality, impurity, greed, and so on. Who of us overindulgence in things that are in and of themselves legitimate? We find ourselves struggling with all of that. Now, I'm trying to think of how best to put this. There's a constant battle for us as Christians, and there's constant training. I found myself reflecting this morning, actually, when I woke up, on a colleague, a fellow minister of the gospel, who could speak about sin, who wrote about sin, and who ended up in just an incredible mess. An incredible mess. And that goes to show that you can do what I'm doing here. You can talk about this. We can have all the words, and yet we can so easily be drawn back into a worldly lifestyle which does us so much harm. I'd love to be able to read to you all of Manton, but I can't. So we put to death. Maybe one other way I'll illustrate this. I'm going to show you a photo just now of one of the occupants of this house that I'm in. That's Mac. Named after macaroni cheese. That's Mac, my daughter's 4.5-month-old puppy. Wonderful. Great wee dog. Mac has to be trained. Mac has to learn not to do things that will harm him, and he has to learn to do things that are good. You hope he develops such a relationship with his master or mistress, in this case, that he'll want to do things out of desire to please and out of love. We have to be trained. Don't just think this is going to happen. We have to train ourselves to put to death these things that are worldly or earthly in us. And we're motivated to do that because of our love for Christ. At least I hope that's the thing. So, not sure where we'll be tomorrow, but good to be speaking to you from Edinburgh. And God bless you, and may you know what it is to wrestle with this. Honestly, I've been thinking about this a lot, mainly because I've been reading Manson. But it's interesting that it ties in with this. And how can I put to death what is worldly within me so I don't live a life as a hypocrite? It's a big question. And I think the answer is here. God bless you, and bye.